Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Soccer Morning coming at you. Jason Davis here. Music courtesy of Alfonso Martinez. Thank you very much for that. That's a nice little peppy way to start the show out. Enjoyed that. And all of the music today, courtesy of Alfonso. Thank you very much for your support of the show, Mr. Martinez. We are live. It is Monday. I am ready to talk about the weekend. I'm ready to talk about some of these big picture items that are emerging. I'm ready to talk about the rash of injuries ahead of the World Cup. Whatever is on your mind, I'm ready. Are you ready? Hopefully you're ready. We will touch on, we'll hit Twitter. We'll get your thoughts there. We'll hit the phone lines. We'll get your thoughts there. We got Charlie Boehm coming up in just a couple of minutes to talk MLS. Some issues surrounding the identities of the U.S. women's national team, and perhaps as compared to the men's team or compared to any team. It's a unique situation, that U.S. women's team. Just read a very excellent column by Charlie on that subject at U.S. Soccer Players, and we'll talk to him about that. Luke Moore will join us as well. We'll go over Liverpool 3, City 2. Certainly that's the headline from the Premier League weekend. You had Arsenal advancing to an FA Cup final on penalties over Wigan. You had I didn't see a second of that whole Sheffield United game, and apparently I missed a barn burner because I looked at the scoreline this morning. I was like, what? 5-3? What the heck? I should have watched that game. Was that game on television in the States? I have no idea. But before we get to all of that, I have to take a moment here and talk about our pledge campaign at Soccer Morning, soccermorning.com, where you can go to support the show. We are fully transitioned into listener support right now. What does that mean exactly? I'm going to pull the curtain back. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys, because I not only do I think it's the fair way to go, you need all of the information. I need to explain what's going on here. I need to explain what the situation is at Soccer Morning. And this is, keep in mind throughout all of this, that this is just the facts. This is where we stand right now. Okay? Don't read anything else into it. It's just the facts. We started a support campaign for the month of April at soccermorning.com. You can go there. You can see our little bar where we are towards our goal. We are 7% of our towards our goal for the month. It's the 14th of April. Hence the breaking point where we have to be to lay it out for you guys. The bottom line is that if we don't meet that goal, we can't do the show. That's the facts of the matter. I mean, it'll kill me to have to stop the show. It'll absolutely kill me. It'll kill Trevor. We're a year into this thing. The fact that we made it a year is somewhat surprising. To have it end now would be a disaster. And so we are just going to put that out there, let you know that we need your support to keep going. This is not, again, this is just sort of the blunt facts of the matter. I can't justify this job if I can't support my family, and we're obviously doing that. You know, we're obviously trying to make it a full-time gig. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody's sitting here looking to get rich off of this. Trust me, that is not the case. We're just trying to get by so we can keep going. Not only because we love doing it, because the future is bright for American soccer. I feel like this show fills a gap. We got a World Cup coming up. Trevor and I have already talked about things we want to do for the World Cup, but we can't do them if we don't get there. So we need your support to help us get there. We're talking about it in addition to Soccer Morning every day, 10 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We're talking about doing a World Cup call-in show in the evenings after the games are finished during the group stage, and then obviously into the knockout rounds. We want to do full-on, full-out, complete and total NASN style American soccer coverage the way that we've been doing it for a couple of years now. And I think we've set a standard that is pretty high. Now, here's the thing. And some people will ask this. They'll say, well, why don't you guys have ads? Where's your sponsors? If only. This is not from lack of trying when it comes to the sponsorship element of supporting this show. Companies, if they're interested, they want to step up, that's great. We're here. We've reached out and we've tried to develop avenues for that. Nothing come to pass. Trevor laid it out for me. Trevor's doing all this stuff behind the scenes. He laid it out for me pretty clearly the other day. He said, look, companies have radio budgets and they have internet ad budgets. They don't have podcast, video / whatever the hell this is budgets. They have somebody who's in charge of putting banner ads on websites. In fact, we lost out, and I'm not going to out any companies here, but we lost out on some revenue because a company decided it was better to put a banner ad on WashingtonPost.com than to put money into this show. That's where we're at. That's the facts. And again, we don't want to do it this way. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to do it this way. We want to give everyone involved who likes this show and likes what we do, and we want to give everybody the opportunity to keep us going. That's the fact. We're at your mercy. I don't know how else to say it. And I'll be I was thinking about this morning. If it turns out that the community's not there, that the listenership isn't there, that the support isn't there, then so be it. That's the audience speaking. I'm not going to be angry about it. I'll be disappointed that the show ended. But I'll understand. I'll understand if that's the case. If we put it out there, please support the show, and there's not enough support, that's the market speaking, is it not? How can you argue with that? How can you argue with that? It would just be, okay, that's it. Show's done. Year, whatever. Go back and work an office job. Hopefully maybe be able to podcast on the side a little bit. That's my life. That would be my life again. It was my life for 3.5, 4 years before this show became the focus, and it would be my life again. It would be a tough transition. I would hate it. I would hate it. I would hate missing out on this show every day, but it would be what I need to do. So there it is, in as blunt and honest terms as I can put it out there. SoccerToMorning.com is where you can support the show. Again, I mean, look, if 1,000 people give us $5, then we're good. Is there 1,000 people out there with $5 in their pocket that listen to the show? Maybe, maybe not. If there's not, again, that's just, we can't justify doing this show without something to show for it, because we all have bills to pay. And I know you guys appreciate that. And I hate to have to lay it out like this, but there it is. So I'm going to leave that there. That's plenty for today. SoccerMorning.com. I'll hit the website a couple more times just to keep reminding you. If you have any thoughts, concerns, questions, both Trevor and I are willing to answer whatever questions you have. You can hit me up at jason@nasn.tv. I will answer your questions. I will be as honest as I possibly can without giving you too much information and either boring you to death or potentially ruining relationships. We're not going to do that. Phone line's going to be open after we talk to Charlie Boehm, after we talk to Luke Moore, so be on the lookout for that later on in the show. I'm going to ask you your surprises from the MLS season 6 weeks in. Definitely going to ask you about that. I want to have a discussion about Arsenal. I want to talk Arsenal because, and I know, look, Arsenal sucks up a lot of the headlines. It's a little bit too much. We're going to cover Liverpool. We're going to cover City. We've talked a lot of United on this show recently. Chelsea gets a win this weekend. So we're going to talk about that, but I want to talk about Arsenal because they have a chance to go and win the FA Cup. I pulled up a website this morning, a website I haven't been to in a while, since Arsenal last won a trophy.com. I'm sorry, since Arsenal last won a trophy.co.uk. 8 years, 10 months, 23 days, 20 hours, 9 minutes, and 9 seconds since Arsenal last won a trophy. And the funny thing about this website, and I want to ask you, would the FA Cup fundamentally change anything? Would it make life better for Arsenal fans? Worse? I'm watching Twitter on Sunday when they're playing in that FA Cup, or sorry, Saturday when they're playing in that FA Cup semi. Arsenal fans hate their team. They hate their team. There's a love-hate relationship like none other. The funny thing about the website is it's got a picture of Steven Gerrard with a thought bubble that says it could be worse because obviously Liverpool hasn't won a Premier League title in 24 years, but they're on the verge of that. Liverpool's going to win a title, and Arsenal hasn't won anything in 8 years and 10 months. And anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, our friend Luke Moore from the Football Ramble will join us. We'll go through all of this. We'll talk FA Cup. We'll talk Premier League. Talk all of it. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, SoccerMorning.com, NASN.TV. Be right back.
Yeah. I get my roof down. I put my roof
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now by Charlie Boehm, MLSsoccer.com, SoccerWire.com, USSoccerPlayers.com. Charlie's a full-time, working all the time, all over the place, raising a family, doing all that good stuff. I set up the next break wrong in the last break. I'm a little flustered this morning, but it's great to have Charlie on. Charlie, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. Always a pleasure, Jason.
You're enjoying the weather. We finally broken that weird winter we had here in the D.C. area, and now we've got a nice spring. It's blustery, but at least it's spring, right?
Yes, but Jason, it may snow tomorrow.
Yes, I know. It very well could snow tomorrow, and that would make me very sad. But it being spring, it finally feels like the MLS season is really kicking into gear, Charlie. And I think that I'm going to start with the local events. DC United beating the New York Red Bulls 1-0. Davy Arnaud with the goal. The Red Bulls, the thing about them, and you made this comparison on Twitter this morning, and I absolutely think it's accurate in a lot of ways. Sort of the MLS Arsenal the Red Bulls are. And it's that sort of feeling that, yes, they are a good team. They have good players. They can put together a really great performance, but they're always just on the verge of sort of falling apart or disappointing, or just sort of, it's not even really like a disastrous collapse. It's just kind of this deflation of the Red Bulls. Are we already seeing it, or is it just a bad, rough start?
They play some very, very beautiful soccer, but often not at the right times. And they score some beautiful goals, but not always at the right times. And they themselves, their quality contributes to raising expectations, higher expectations among their fans and observers. And then they often struggle to meet them. And after that, the tail end of that loss here in DC, I said, they're a gambler's nightmare. I would never want to have to wager a dollar on that team, because it's just so hard to know which team's going to show up. In the last couple of years, I've seen this team lay out some real stinkers against and lose to teams they should not lose to, and then I've seen them play as if they could beat anyone on earth on that given day. So it's a little early to say, but there's certainly Mike Peck, he said that the frustration is creeping in, or that sense that something is wrong is creeping in. So they're fighting off the panic right now. But watching them, when you step back, the finishing eluded them. Yeah. But there were some really, really beautiful play, especially in the second half. They were poor in the first half, and they paid for it. But DC were hanging on for dear life there. And Henry's link-up play was excellent. He missed a few good chances, but he was also had some fantastic flicks and drag backs and setting up his teammates very well. And you get the sense that when they're really focused and on, they could still be a supporter shield team and better. But right now, it's not clicking, and that leads to shorter. They have a shorter reaction time, I guess, because of the market they're in and the fans they have and the history they have. They're always gonna feel the heat a little quicker, and that's starting to build up right now.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously have quality, and I wonder how much of their issues are down to just a lack of consistency. And when I say that, I mean they haven't been really able to put out their best 11 over the course of the season so far. It's either Turf and Alave and Henry are missing, or McCarty picks up a knock, and Cahill's obviously injured right now. How much of that is playing into this? And obviously that they want to get everybody back healthy, but there's always a chance that somebody's going to be missing for a large portion of the season, at least one guy.
Certainly, and others have pointed this out on a couple of occasions, but we think of this as Thierry Henry's team, but really it's Tim Cahill's bunch. I mean, he's the heart of that squad. His mentality is the one that is decisive for them, in my opinion, and in the opinions of others. So without him, there's that little bit of urgency and a little bit of steel, kind of, if you will, not just physically, but more mentally, that I think they lack. Because Henry's an artist. But I think Cahill's an artisan. So they're playing well given all those things. But we should have higher expectations for them. They didn't really make many changes in this offseason because they seem to have everything required to contend for trophies. So, but we're having similar kind of discussions about DC United. Or maybe even more grave, looking signs just a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden they're a 500 team that's holding a playoff spot right now. So
yeah, is that Is that
New York can turn this around certainly very quickly, but it's just so hard to predict what you're going to get from them.
Yeah, look, I mean, there is a safety net in MLS and parity reigns, and there's always a chance to go on a run and make the playoffs, and then everything is kind of forgiven depending on how you do once you get there. And certainly the bar for the Red Bulls is, I mean, look, it should be MLS Cup finalist at the very least, if not winning the whole thing, especially off that Supporters Cup, Supporters Shield win last year. To the DC side, is this a little bit of smoke and mirrors for DC United? I mean, it's positives. Got to grasp onto whatever you can when you're a DC United fan because it's been such a bad couple of years, but it doesn't, I don't know, it's not convincing, but is that even a concern right now?
Well, what they've needed more than anything else is results. So they've gotten a couple of good ones at home. And so I think you have to, I'm not going to criticize too much right now because that was once again, when you look at the context of the team with a really nightmare season fresh behind them and a lot of questions about chemistry and roles and tactics, you have to give them credit for answering those by gutting out a win. They scored in I believe it was the 4th minute on Saturday, but were peppered for long periods after that. But they got it done. And I'm intrigued by this trade for Chris Rolfe. I think he's brought something different, someone who can play between the lines a bit. And hopefully maybe improve that attacking chemistry. But there's things that aren't working here. I mean, Eddie Johnson is having a hard time. He's just not looking particularly confident or comfortable around goal. He's a confounding player because when he's on, he looks like he's just so regal and so athletic and so natural. And when he's not, some of the same characteristics make you wonder if he's putting out full effort. And that's probably not fair because he is contributing to his team in other ways, and that was something Ben Olsen emphasized post-game. But there's something missing there, and there's something where he's certainly well short of his full ability. And I'm not really sure if Ben Olsen exactly knows the best tactical setup for his team in terms of who's playing where. I mean, Perry Kitchen has been an excellent defensive midfielder for them. They seem to have their back line pretty set right now, but then there's a lot of questions beyond that. So we'll see. They're 2-1, and they're in a lot better shape than they were a month ago. But questions remain if they'll be in that top echelon of the Eastern Conference teams.
2 wins. That's a building block. 2 wins so far for DC United.
I think they won 3 all of last year, so let's give credit where it's due.
Lots of time to match last year's total at the very least. Just one more thing on United and Johnson because you mentioned him. Is it unfair to sort of look at Eddie Johnson in DC as not a disaster, but sort of, maybe a problem waiting to happen? Is it unfair to do that? Because I think a lot of people thought, well, this was a really bad team last year. They're going to be able to get him the ball in dangerous places, and is he going to be effective? And if it doesn't work out for a while, if he doesn't score some goals, or God forbid he misses out on a World Cup because his form suffers, what happens with Eddie Johnson then?
It's impossible not to have those questions and thoughts, but I will pass on that for now because everything that's coming out of that camp is that they're satisfied with what he's bringing, with his hold-up play, how he's bringing teammates into the game, and Olsen said he's doing his job and then some. That said, he is officially a designated player. There was some doubt about that, about how his salary was being handled, but he's on the list now. He's a DP. With DPs come, and especially when you go to the lengths that he went to get that contract, that changes the calculus a little bit in terms of what's expected of you. It'd be one thing if I think he's being set up. He complained about service early in the season with some validity. Now, not so much. I mean, there were some great balls put right on his head, put right on his feet on Saturday. So, and once again, this is a team question, but it's more urgently an individual question for EJ because I would say conventional wisdom is that Chris Wondolowski has pulled level with him in the race for one of those final striker spots on the World Cup roster. So, Eddie needs to prove to Klinsmann that he's settled and playing at or near his best, and that certainly does not appear to be the case right now.
My question for MLS fans at this point in the year, and most of these teams have played 6 games. Some of it's a little different. San Jose, I think, has played 4. So there's a lot of people on 5, a lot of teams on 5. So there's a little bit of a variation here. But to this point, Charlie, where do you see the surprises? What's the thing that jumps out at you and you're just a little bit flabbergasted that that's the situation?
Of course, the Columbus Crew. They're in first place. They are, and they're doing it with attractive footy. You know, they're playing well. They seem to be remarkably well coached, and they are, you know, they should be a neutral's favorite really right now. I mean, if you're looking for a team to go check out and learn more about, I would urge you to go watch a Crew game right now, because they're able to play in different ways. I think, as Matt Doyle said this week, they're patient when they need to be. They're urgent and direct when they need to be. I've seen them score a number of different types of goals. They've really got Higuain, their main attraction, playing in a place that really suits him, I think, and they're creating a lot of chances. And they're a contender. I think you have to say, you know, there's a lot of season left, but go watch the Crew, and I think you'll be impressed. I mean, they're able to move the ball forward with a lot of pace, while still very, you know, calculated and focused. A lot of one-touch passing, a lot of very intelligent long-range passing. So that would be the biggest one for me right now.
That's certainly interesting in the Eastern Conference. Columbus Crew top of the heap right now. Again, it's early. Caveat. I had this discussion on the Best Soccer Show last night. I'm going to bring it to you quickly before we move on to some U.S. Women's National Team discussion. But do you get this? I mean, this is true in MLS all the time because it's a thin league in terms of top talent. But when you look at the top of the East, Columbus and Toronto right there right now, both those teams trying to get back. Well, Columbus trying to get back to their old level, and Toronto trying to make the playoffs for the first time ever. But both those teams are heavily dependent on one guy in particular. Michael Bradley for Toronto, we saw it this weekend, and Higuain for Columbus. If either one of those guys goes down, and we know Bradley's going to the World Cup, does that submarine these teams and their chances?
That's a good question. Although I think, you know, the TFC Colorado match was long parts of that were not particularly enjoyable to watch on Saturday. But really, Michael Bradley's absence, I mean, you're always going to miss him. And, of course, with Jermaine Defoe out of the lineup as well, they're certainly a different team. But the drop-off probably wasn't what I expected, and they dictated play for long periods in that game. And a big part of it was Bradley's replacement, Kyle Becker, who's a young Canadian international who so far had kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a bit, it seemed. He was a top draft pick last season, I believe it was. He did a great job, I thought, in relief of Bradley. He's, of course, not the seasoned international that Michael Bradley is, but he did a pretty good impersonation of him. Sat a little bit deeper, maybe wasn't quite as enterprising in trying to roam forward and play that final pass, but it suggested that TFC maybe have a little bit more depth than we give them credit for. The questions do linger about a plan B, not just individual in terms of individuals, but the tactics. You know, does Ryan Nelson have a way to change the tempo a bit, and can they possess the ball a bit more? Because they've been effective with a very sort of direct style, and direct in a positive way, I guess, as much as negative. We think of that as kind of a slur, but I think that he needs to prove as a tactician that he can set his team out to play in different ways in different circumstances. Maybe hold the ball, control the rhythm a bit more. So, and then on the Crew side, that remains to be seen because they have had Higuain for the most part. But I get the sense that Berhalter will have a plan and have something in place to address that. You know, let's say maybe that have to be a little more defensive or a little more destructive without him. But they're using the width so well, and their ideas are so clear, and they're clearly well coached. So I'm intrigued, but for now, you know, Higuain's worth the price of admission. He's probably the best playmaker in the league at the moment. And although I do have to say too, you know, they dropped 2 points out at San Jose yesterday, and it looks to me, and I need to do more homework on this, but it looks like they're playing a more of a kind of a European zonal marking scheme on corner kicks, and that did not work. They gave Chris Wondolowski a free look at goal, so that's certainly something to watch. That's a controversial idea, I guess, in terms of bringing that sort of fairly foreign idea to MLS. So I'm intrigued to see if they continue to have a soft spot on set pieces.
Zonal marking, all right, yeah. I didn't leave nearly enough time to get into this, but I will point people in the direction of the USSoccerPlayers.com, where Charlie and I both write. He has an interesting piece, the title of which is "What is a National Team?" And this relates to the U.S. Women's National Team, the firing of Tom Sermanni, sort of the unique conditions that dictate how that team is run and sort of the internal politics of it all. It's a fascinating discussion to have, Charlie. I wish we had more time for it, but just sort of outline the basics of this piece and those issues before we let you go.
Yeah, to me, it's a fundamental question that's popped up in many countries, but especially here in the U.S. How do you kind of structure and envision your team? The ideal in a lot of soccer powerhouses is that you have a deep, talented player pool, and you pick the 15 or 20 or 25 players who are in top form at the moment, playing in a high level, the professional game, getting playing time and playing well. And so you call those guys in, and you maybe have a core that's generally going to be guys who do that consistently, regularly. But then those who lose their starting lineup, spot in the starting lineup, or who go on a goalless streak or what have you, have to sit, and they have to earn every single call up to the national team. Klinsmann talks about this a lot with the men, right? You have to be playing. You have to be playing at a high level. You have to be doing all these different things. And yet in the U.S., I think we have also this tradition of not having that deep player pool. So we have to sort of pick a core group, put our eggs in that basket, right, and keep a team environment. Like we had a residency leading up to the '94 World Cup when we didn't have a league to play in. So we pick the 20 or so best players and pour a lot of time and energy into them and try and create something that is greater than the sum of its parts, right? I mean, that's how we did what we did in '94. That's been the key to a lot of successful American teams. The women right now are in a position where they have a domestic league specifically created to provide those opportunities to stay sharp, for new players to rise up and get opportunities in the national team. But that's contrasting, and I think really conflicting right now with the perception that a lot of the established veterans have on that team, which is that we are a team. We won an Olympic gold medal. Right. So this is essentially the core of the group that's going to compete in the 2015 Women's World Cup. Yeah. Tom Sermanni looked at it as a player pool. He said, I'm going to change the roster. I'm going to change the 11 even in the World Cup, depending on what the situation calls for. And that seems to have gotten him in hot water, whether you believe it was the players that had a role or simply a decision by Sunil Gulati, the president of the federation. There are differing ideas of what that was. So how do you challenge and refresh a team without upsetting a proven core? Yeah. Very, very interesting topic.
Fascinating stuff. Charlie Boehm from MLSsoccer.com, SoccerWire.com, USSoccerPlayers.com, where that piece is. Charlie, appreciate your time as always. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, now we'll get Luke Moore on the line and talk Premier League and FA Cup and everything happening in England this weekend. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Stay right there.
Roller coasters, holy roller. I got shot down in Southern California.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now by Luke Moore from the Football Ramble. You know the Football Ramble. You love the Football Ramble. Luke, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's a bright, sunny morning in my part of the world, and you can't really complain when that's the case. Is it a?
Yeah,
it's a
spring
bright.
is strong here too.
It's a bright, sunny morning for Liverpool Football Club. Luke,
It is.
they beat City at Anfield 3-2, and I guess my first question is, it was one of those brilliant games that lived up to the hype. We had a little bit of everything. It was terrible to see Yaya Toure leave the field. We had Vincent Kompany with a terrible gaffe that ultimately ended up being the difference. How much of that, though, was the emotion of the day? I mean, it's tough on City to have to go to Anfield that particular week.
Yeah, it was a pretty emotionally charged affair, wasn't it? And I think the game more than did credit to the occasion. It was a superb tie between two teams really gunning for it, and but two teams who picked decent attacking lineups and played with good tempo and good intensity, and there was no let up really for the entire game. And it was full of incident and full of talking points, and eventually, as I said to you last week, I thought Liverpool would win it. I thought it would be a home win. And then, having said that, when Man City pegged them back to 2-2, I thought, oh, hang on a minute, Man City are going to go on and win this, and that'll be that. But credit to Liverpool. I mean, they pounced on that Vincent Kompany mistake, and if anything, that was such a good example of how mistakes are punished so ruthlessly at the top level. Philip Coutinho quite late on in the game, probably a bit tired, but was on his toes, and had the quickness and the awareness to sort of pounce on that and smash it in the bottom corner, and that was the difference. And that could be a title costing mistake for Man City.
Absolutely, that could be it. Now, when you watch that game, and you mentioned when City came back 2-2, that sort of changed. You were imagining Liverpool going on and just sort of bossing the rest of the game, but there was a difference between the two halves. How much of that is? I don't ask you where the differences are in tactics and everything else, but what accounts for the differences in Liverpool being so dominant in the first half and then sort of falling all over themselves in the second before ultimately getting the winner?
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember there's two really good teams, and Liverpool's season has been hallmarked by them starting really quickly. I mean, they've sought to blow teams away pretty much all season from the start. They always start tremendously quickly, and then in the contrary to that, Manchester City's season has been sort of, I suppose, dictated by how good they are in the second half. I mean, they tend to sort of finish games really well. So I mean, it went by the book to that end. But you got to remember, it's very, very difficult for Liverpool or Man City to dominate that game in its entirety, just because both teams are so good and they've got such good attacking quality. It's funny for Liverpool when they go 2-0 up at home to Man City. They think, well, that's a really good result for us if we can stick this out. But if they are going to stick it out in quotes, then they're going to have to change how they play, and so that's obviously a little bit different for them. And if they carry on the way they're going, they're probably going to leave gaps. So it's a bit of a catch-22 for them. And Man City were always going to be good for a goal at least. So it's very easy to judge how to play it and how they should have done it and what they should have done tactically different. I mean, let's not forget, Brendan Rodgers' Liverpool team are a very tactically versatile side. They can play a different range of formations and do a different range of jobs in terms of the playing personnel. But sometimes you've got to realise that Man City are a good team as well, and it's not necessarily always all about tactics. It's about the occasion and about who can get first to the ball and who can make the right decision in those split seconds and make a difference.
I suppose, yes, exactly. Liverpool to beat City, one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league, is going to have to play the way that they play best, and clearly that's going to leave gaps, as you said, because Liverpool. I mean, the thing that strikes you when you watch them is they are go, and they are devastating that way. Let me ask you about sort of a couple of moments, and there was a question over Suarez again going down easily. There were a couple of moments where it seemed like Clattenburg had an opportunity to send somebody off and chose not to, and these are subjective decisions. I thought he did fine for the most part, but are you of the opinion that a referee should hold off on a second yellow if it's not an egregious foul because, if it's a dive, no second yellow for a dive because that would change the game? Are you one of those people?
No. I mean, the referee's got to apply the laws. I mean, that's literally his job. So there's a couple of key instances for me. I thought overall Clattenburg refereed the game pretty well. It was a difficult occasion. It was played at a huge tempo, a huge pace, and these players are athletes at the very top of their game, and the way Clattenburg kept up the play, as Gary Neville pointed out on the coverage over here, was spot on. There's a couple of incidents that I suppose are worth talking about. One was the Sarko challenge on Dzeko, which should have, which was a penalty. I mean, I don't know why it wasn't given, possibly because Dzeko tended to sort of make the most of the dive and sort of went down a bit late.
Right.
It was a horrendous tackle by Sarko. He completely missed the ball, and it was a sort of error that could have cost them the game. They got away with that, so I think that was probably the wrong decision. But again, in real time, when things are all going on, sometimes I think we might ask a bit too much of referees.
Yes.
I don't think refereeing in general this season has been great in terms of the standard, but I think it would be a bit harsh to criticise them too much for that. The second one was the Suarez second dive, in quotes. Again, I'm not sure it was a dive because, I mean, I've seen about 5 angles of that Dean Michaelis challenge, and I couldn't tell if there was contact or not. Now, of course, it can still be a dive if there is contact.
Yes.
So Clattenburg had a decision to make there. If he did keep him on the pitch because of the occasion, because he wanted to keep 11 men on the pitch, and that's wrong. I don't think he should have done that. I think the red card should have been brought out for a second yellow if he thought it was a dive. But he may not have thought it was a dive. So it's difficult to get inside his head, and we don't tend to have referees explaining their decisions over here. So it'll be difficult to know. And, I would also just point you quickly to the Jordan Henderson sending off, which was the right decision and which was a big decision.
Yes.
And he had no problem sending him off then. By no means was the game won by then. I mean, anything could have happened. And he made the decision to send him off, which is a big decision because Henderson's a massive player for Liverpool. So I don't think he was necessarily bottling big decisions or not doing things that he should have done for any sort of ulterior motive. I just think, he has a perception and a theory on what things have gone on and what's happened, and he makes decisions based on that. And we're not inside his head, and we couldn't do the job as good as he does. Overall, I thought his refereeing performance was good.
Okay, fair enough. I'm with you on that, and I'm one of those people who will give referees a large range benefit of the doubt because it is a difficult job, and we have the benefit of replay over and over and over again. You mentioned Dzeko.
Listen, Jason, that Dean Michaelis thing, I saw that last 6 times. I still can't tell if it's a dive or not.
Yeah,
I still can't tell if there was contact or not. So I mean, it's pretty harsh to judge him on that basis.
It's all, and I've even read some studies on the phenomenon of bias. When you watch a replay, you're bringing bias to the table, whether you think you are or not. In this case, obviously, Luis Suarez has himself a bit of a reputation, and that, of course, that
which complicates it for the referee as well.
Absolutely, it does. And you mentioned Dzeko. The reason players go down easily in the box is because of that very instance. Dzeko didn't go down, didn't get the penalty when he probably should have. If he does go down, maybe he gets it next time.
Yeah, I think also the referee's got hundreds of decisions to make every game, and if he gets one wrong in the penalty area, he'll get hammered for that. I think he got that one wrong. I think that was a penalty. But, I mean, it's possible to disagree with his decision, but at the same time also understand that he's got a difficult job to do.
Right.
And I don't think it's worth going over the top about it. I mean, I think I've read the study you're talking about the home bias and all that sort of stuff. But I've also read that referees have been shown consistently through studies to get well over 90% of decisions right. I mean, it's not really much more you can ask for than that. I mean, they're human beings. I don't really want to support a team or enjoy a sport where each decision is decided on by committee and it takes 10 minutes. It's just not what the game's about. And the same way that look at what we saw Wayne Rooney fluff his lines against Bayern Munich when he had a decent shot on goal. He made a mistake there. Yeah. Players do it as well. The referees also do it. It's part of the game.
Yeah, robot referees in the distant future after I'm gone, please.
Yeah, right. As long as I'm well gone by then.
Yeah. All right. So Liverpool wins, top of the table. 77 points, 2 points up on Chelsea. Manchester City 2 games in hand, but even if we chalk those up as wins, though they still can't get to Liverpool. Liverpool wins out, they win the title. Are they your pick at this point? I know you had mentioned you had picked City if they won this game.
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult to predict. I mean most of the people who predict these sort of things don't really. I mean it's guesswork really. You don't know what's going to happen. Look at the games that teams have got left. Liverpool have got Norwich away next week. They've got a very good record against Norwich. Luis Suarez in particular has got an excellent record against them. You'd probably fancy them to win that, even though Norwich are fighting for their lives. Norwich were unlucky against Fulham, but I mean, I don't think they've got the quality to beat Liverpool. Mm-hmm. They've got to play Chelsea at home. That's obviously, you don't need to tell you how big a game that is. We don't know how that's going to go, but Liverpool have been strong at home. They've got Crystal Palace, I think, away. That's probably the biggest one outside of the Chelsea game, because Tony Pulis isn't the sort of manager to let his players switch off. They'll take great pride in if they can win or get a point there. And then they've got Newcastle, which they should win. So, yeah, of course they can do it. I mean, they've won 10 in a row now. I mean, the 4 games they've got ahead of them are winnable because they've shown they can beat anyone, especially at home. So it's in their hands. I think Chelsea have got a reasonable shout, though. I mean, it's interesting the way that Mourinho tends to set his teams up away from home. It's the big teams. He's taken 0-0s at Arsenal and at other places. So, I mean, you know, he knows that's not going to be enough at Anfield. He knows he's going to have to go and try and win the game. And I don't know if they can keep Liverpool out. The one thing that terrifies teams is just the amount of goals in that Liverpool team and the amount of pace and the amount of sort of counter-attacking ability they've got and the confidence they've got and the team spirit and all that stuff. People are saying, oh, yeah, they can see too many goals. No, they've got a couple of players who aren't great on quality. You look at the team spirit they got at that club. Look at the confidence they're playing with. Look at the Steven Gerrard huddle after the game. Mm-hmm. They know what they've got to do. They've got a real winning mentality there, and I think you'd be brave to back against them now.
Moving down the table, I'm going to get to Arsenal making the FA Cup final, having to beat Wigan on penalties to do it, but we'll get to that in a second. With Arsenal playing in the FA Cup, now Everton beating Sunderland, they're in 4th place at the moment. What do you foresee here because that's where the next level of intrigue is? But who's going to finish 4th? Everton going to make the Champions League? Yeah,
I mean, Everton have got a harder run in. Arsenal have got much easier games left, but Arsenal have got a lot of injuries and they're not playing with any confidence. I was at Wembley on Saturday. It was an interesting game, pretty sort of strange atmosphere, and obviously Arsenal toiled 120 tough minutes against a Championship team. Not really going to do them an awful lot of good going to their running. Everton have still got to play Man City. I think it's at Goodison Park as well. So that may even put paid to Man City's title ambitions, but it could put paid to Everton's top 4 ambitions. That's a huge game. But listen, if Arsenal want to get in the top 4, they're going to have to win every game probably, and they're going to have to do it at a time when they've got players out for injury. They're not playing with an awful lot of confidence, and they've got a cup final on their mind and this narrative that they haven't won anything for such a long time, and they'll be desperate to win that. They'll have a great chance against Hull, obviously. It's a tough one to call. It really is, because, you know, I think Martinez have done such a good job at Everton. If he can get them to the top 4 the first time of asking, that's such a big achievement for them. And again, it's in their hands, and that is a huge boost.
Just to that Arsenal point, again, beating Wigan on penalties, I suppose that's an uplifting moment, whether it was a struggle that probably shouldn't have been or not. But you mentioned they're going to be desperate to win it. Is the FA Cup final... I mean, is making that FA Cup final, is that a distraction in the bid to stay 4th, or is it help because of team spirit? I mean, how do you sort of view that? Because Arsenal is always a question psychology-wise.
Yeah, I think ordinarily, if they had a clean bill of health and they had a squad that was perhaps a little bit more immediately available to them in terms of fit players, I think they'd relish both opportunities, and I think they should do that. And the cup final is a great thing. I've seen my team win the cup final at Wembley, and it was amazing. And of course, all those players want to win it. They want to do both. Simple as that. It's not politically or PR acceptable for them to not admit that. They've got to say they want to do both, and they've got to try and do both. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, it's not. I don't even think it's a question of prioritising one over the other. They've got a certain amount of games left. They've got to win them all, and they've got a reasonable run in terms of their league. But I think last week or the week before, it's difficult when you're not in good form, when you're struggling to beat teams you should be beating, and it presents its own challenge because you're on a bit of a hard into nothing. When you're lacking in confidence and you're playing against teams that you should beat, even if you win, people just say, "Oh, well, you should have won that anyway."
Right.
And the Wigan game was interesting because I actually think Wigan could have won the game. When Arsenal had a lot of chances, but most of the chances came when Arsenal were chasing the game, and Wigan sort of tried to slightly change how they played. Wigan should have just carried on playing as they were playing to get their noses in front. But I mean, I guess it's easy for me to say. I mean, they had to take off McManaman, and they obviously were getting a bit tired. But I mean, that was a hard day at the office for Arsenal, that, and it could take its toll. But they've got another game this week against West Ham, which they've got to win, and it's going to be tough for them just through the players they've got out and the form they're in, and the tiredness levels they're going to experience.
You know, if not that I'm wishing this on Arsenal, but if they don't win the FA Cup final, it's Hull. They're going to be favorites, but you never know. They don't win the FA Cup. We saw Wigan win last year against City. If they don't win the FA Cup and they finish 5th. Does that have any wider ramifications? Is Wenger's finally pushed in some direction, and do they end up making changes, or is it just let's try again next year?
I don't think they'll make. What do you mean changes to the manager?
Well, I mean, look, I'm incredulous when people bring up the possibility of Arsene Wenger being fired or him, suggesting he should resign or leave or whatever. But I think that's out there. And when you haven't won a trophy and it'll be 9 years at that point, then and you're Arsenal, people are going to ask. And certainly Arsenal fans are just some of the more consistently frustrated individuals that I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's no way he'll be fired. I mean, I can't see that happening.
No.
You're talking about the Emirates, which is the house that Wenger built, effectively.
Yeah.
He's earned his right to stay there as long as he wants. A lot of Arsenal fans will argue that the longer he stays, the more his legacy is tarnished. But that's not really for me to say. I mean, I'm not an Arsenal fan and I'm not at the club. So I think, does them winning the FA Cup and then maybe nipping 4th as well prove a fitting end to Wenger's tenure? Can they get a manager in who's available, who could take him on to the next level? Because at some point, Wenger has got to leave. He's not going to be here forever. It's like a Ferguson thing. At some point, he's got to leave. And he has to choose the time that he leaves very carefully. And the new stadium's there now. If they can secure Champions League football for yet another season and win a trophy, is that a perfect time for him to sign off and hopefully get someone in like Jurgen Klopp or maybe even Roberto Martinez? Mm-hmm. It's a possibility. I've got no sort of particular insight or special information behind the scenes into that, but it could happen. And a lot of people think Arsenal might be going a bit backwards at the moment with the players they're signing and with how they're getting on and the lack of consistency and the lack of fitness for their players, all this sort of stuff. It's difficult to judge, really. But the only thing that's keeping Wenger in the job realistically at the moment is the fact that what he's achieved in the past. Right. And he's earned his right to be there still. And there's no way they'll fire him. I mean, even if they want him to leave, he'll just be gently asked to leave, and he'll leave, and it will come out as a resignation, and it come out as a retirement or something like that, or he'll be moved upstairs or something,
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the right way to handle it for Arsenal. Again, it's sort of this question of where the line is between not complacency necessarily, but sort of the same message and the same manager. And if it hasn't worked, and obviously Arsenal has a high standard, then you have to wonder, when is it the right time to make a change? And yes, he has earned the right to make that call himself. But then again, I mean, I think everyone, and you can't judge Arsenal in a vacuum, Luke, of course, but their season, this particular season, and I know this is every Arsenal year, but it seems like it started so well and there was so much hope, and then to have it sort of collapse here, not in a disastrous way, but if they don't finish in the Champions League spot, that sort of is a disaster for that club. Yeah,
I mean, I understand what you're saying about the level playing field and stuff like that. I mean, City and Chelsea especially are making huge, are spending huge amounts of money. But I mean, look who's big favourites for the title this season. It's not City or Chelsea, it's Liverpool. And Brendan Rodgers has shown what you can do with a good bit of team spirit and some tactical flexibility and some encouragement and obviously a few signs and a bit of money here and there. But it can be done. I mean, I'm not saying Liverpool will definitely do it, but I mean, they've shown that it can be competed right down to the final game or two. And so, Wenger, I look at it a number of different ways. Is Arsene Wenger really, if you take it season by season, recently, is he overachieving? Is he underachieving? I would say he's probably underachieving. Okay. Is he making players he signed better than when they were signed? I wouldn't argue that he is. No. He certainly has done that in the past, but there are players there who aren't performing at the level they've previously performed at under Wenger. And sooner or later, you've got to take a sort of cold and calculated decision on whether he's doing a great job or not at the moment, at this present time, because you can't dine out on past glories all the time. No. And none of us can do that in our professional lives. So, it's something that needs to be looked at. I'll get a feeling he might move on. He might move himself on sooner rather than later. That's just my instinct.
Yeah, it's difficult. I know that Arsenal fans would certainly not want this, but you almost wonder if it would actually be more helpful for the club and to transition into that next stage if they had a season like United is having now, because United is going to have to make some significant alterations to their team, if not their managerial situation. If Arsenal went through a season when they finished 7th and it just wasn't very good and lots of pressure, then at least that puts those wheels in motion.
Yeah, I think also a lot of fans want to be seen to be patient. And if you were to say to an Arsenal fan, I actually said to a good friend of mine who I went to the game with on Saturday, who's an Arsenal fan, if I gave you a piece of paper with Arsene Wenger out, ? And tick yes or no, what would you tick? And he found it very difficult to answer it because of the past that Wenger's given Arsenal, because of everything he's done for the club, and because they may well, if they're really honest with themselves, think that someone else could come in and do a better job now, but they feel loyal to him, and I think that's fair enough. I think they deserve a bit of credit for that. And the people who do shout Wenger out and online and in silly vox pops on TV stations and stuff, maybe aren't that reflective. Maybe they say, look, he's earned his right and he can stay for as long as he wants. He's got a job for life. And maybe we should be applauding that, because football isn't really about that much these days. But on the flip side to that, you've got to think, fans want to win things and teams want to be successful, and players want to go on and win trophies, and they're going to miss out if they don't improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of questions. And, what kind of club do we want to be? What kind of fans do we want to be? What kind of lots of fascinating questions. Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble joining us to talk Premier League, FA Cup, and Arsenal's future. I appreciate the time as always, Luke. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good week. Cheers.
There it goes. Very good stuff from Luke, as always. All right, we're here. We are free. It is your show for the rest of the duration of the program, the next 40 minutes or so, a little bit less than that. 347-756-6276 is our phone number. I had somebody calling in while I was talking to Luke. I wish I could have taken that. Fortunately, I wasn't able to. You can call back in, get in with your thoughts from, again, the Premier League, which the number of storylines in the Premier League is enough to keep your eye on that league. And there's always the question of whether or not the Premier League gets too much of our attention. When I say our, I mean American soccer fans. I've got soccer friends in soccer, friends on Twitter, people I converse with regularly who either don't pay attention to the Premier League, it's just not their league, don't care about the Premier League, think it's overrated, whatever, who will tell you that, yes, the Premier League gets too much attention. And obviously there are reasons why the Premier League strikes the chord in the United States that it does. And number one is language. Number one is the fact that we can turn that TV on, watch a game from a Premier League stadium, understand what the fans are chanting, understand what the announcers are saying. There's a cultural exchange between the U.S. and the U.K. that fosters that relationship. Helps a lot when it comes to the attractiveness of the Premier League. It also helps that they spend a ton of money in that league and they have top talent. That helps as well. And City and Liverpool is probably the best game in the world. If you're considering the stage, if you're considering the quality of the players and the amount of money that's represented in the salaries and the transfer fees in those players, it was probably the best game in the world. There's a reason people pay attention. But that also means that, the Bundesliga gets left out a little bit. Clearly, Spain gets its fair share of attention at the top, but none of you are watching a mid-table, bottom-of-the-table clash in Spain. It's just not happening. And yet people will turn on their televisions and watch Fulham Norwich because, hey, it's relegation from the Premier League. Are you watching the relegation dogfights from Spain? Be honest with me, are you? If you are, then you are committed, and I applaud you. But again, there's an obvious reason we are attracted to the Premier League. And it is fascinating right now. Liverpool could win their first title in 24 years. Their first Premier League title, because the Premier League didn't exist when they won their last First Division title. You have Chelsea chasing them down. You have City right there. City with all that money and all of that spending, all of that they've done. They have one title in their pocket. They clearly would like to go get another one. Do they need to be validated by another title, Manchester City? You have Everton fighting for a Champions League spot with Arsenal. 2 points separating those two teams right now. Roberto Martinez doing the amazing job that he's doing at Arsenal. And I guess I have a question for Premier League fans, for Everton fans, for United fans. Does what Roberto Martinez is doing at Everton right now change the way you think of David Moyes' stint at that club? Now, he had his fair share of stuff happening, success, but there was always the talking point, the narrative when he came to David Moyes at Everton was that he was overachieving with less resources than the teams around him in the table year to year. But now that Roberto Martinez has them on the verge, very, very close of a return to the Champions League, does that cast David Moyes and his tenure at Everton in a different light? And here's the problem with answering that question. You are biased by David Moyes' struggles at United. You can't help but be biased by that. You see what's happening at Manchester United, and you go, well, clearly David Moyes is not the manager we thought he was. He's not as good as we thought he was. So we are going to go back in time, retroactively ding him for his struggles at United by downgrading his Everton experience, his stewardship of that club. And before the season started, when David Moyes was making the shift from Everton to United, when he announced that he was leaving, I'm not sure. And look, hindsight, retrospect, I don't blame any Everton fans for this, but I'm not sure everybody was excited about Roberto Martinez coming in. There was how much time between, I can go back and look at this, how much time between David Moyes announcing he was going to United and Roberto Martinez getting the Everton job? I know Roberto Martinez was a success in quotes at Wigan, and he won. They got relegated. He had nothing to work with there, but he won an FA Cup and overachieved at Wigan. And now is Roberto Martinez overachieving at Everton? Vince from Toronto, what's up, man?
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
It's going, dude.
I'm a massive Everton fan, Jason, and it is an interesting question, and it's a question that, myself, I know my boy Justin from Vancouver, he's also an Everton fan, and just any Everton fans also that I've talked to. It's a question that we've mulled over the entire season, It's only one season,
sure,
but we've seen such change under Roberto Martinez, and we've seen when David Moyes, in a sense, has been given the keys to the castle, what he's done or been unable to do in Manchester United. You really do, think about, what exactly has happened. And, the more cynical fan might say, well, we've been in this situation before with David Moyes, almost getting to European spots, but then just barely missing out. And then you got other fans who immediately jumped on the Martinez bandwagon when the team started getting those results early on in the season after drawing like our first 3 games or something, and then they were ecstatic about the situation, saying, "Oh, this man must be better than Moyes. I can't believe it." But for the most part, we appreciate everything that Moyes has done for Everton, and you have to. He took this club from being relegation threatened and turned them into a higher than mid-table team. I wouldn't call Everton mid-table by any stretch. They don't finish 10th or 9th. They're constantly in that 7th, 6th, and even that 5th spot occasionally.
Okay. Top third.
But what Martinez has done, though, is brought a whole new message, I suppose you could say, to this club and what he believes. And, talking to the players a lot, Tim Howard being a big one, they interviewed Howard and he said, he loved Moyes and he loved what Moyes did, but with Martinez, everything is so much more concrete in terms of what the vision of the club is, how everything works. And he said that he feels that this has made the club be able to. They've always punched above their weight, but now they're actually seeing results with that. And despite their limited resources, they're able to compete because everything that Martinez does, you don't question it, you understand it, and that helps you as a player as well. I mean, Ross Barkley never got an opportunity under David Moyes. I believe David Moyes, he played Ross a couple times, and then he didn't like the way things were going, so he froze him out of the squad and kept sending him out on loan. But Martinez said, this kid has a lot of talent. He decided to use him. We've seen the emergence of John Stones in the absence of Phil Jagielka and his injury. And, Jason, I got to tell you, man, looking at a guy like Stones, I'm telling you right now, I do believe a player like him is going to be the next great English center back. And a lot of other English fans have said that they look at John Stones potentially being a future England captain.
Interesting.
This kid plays so well for his age. He's younger than me, which is depressing in a couple of different ways, but it's so refreshing to see a 19-year-old kid just playing with such a bravado. People have way too early.
All
ridiculous.
Right. All right, you're turning this into an Everton love letter, and I'm excited for you. It's a really look. Clearly, a lot of Americans have a soft spot for Everton. There's a history of an American presence, and Tim Howard is still there. And to see Tim Howard get the chance to play Champions League football would be brilliant. Now, sort of going back and again and reviewing the Moyes' tenure at Everton and what he did get Everton into the Champions League. That happened once. That was a long time ago. It was early into his stint there. But it's interesting to consider the way you think about David Moyes now, or the way Everton fans are sort of reviewing his history in light of what Martinez has done right now. When you consider that Martinez is close to on the same sort of path as Moyes in his first couple of years.
You're right. But I do believe the biggest difference is Moyes didn't necessarily instill the belief that we could beat the top teams.
All right, fair enough. And you know what? Vince? Again, I think everybody is being biased by what's going on at United. And I'll admit, I wasn't paying close attention to David Moyes' words when he was at Everton. I wasn't listening for his...
Jason, those were his words. Anytime there'd be a game, during a press conference, whatever, he'd be, we're going to try our best. We'll play our game. We'll see what happens.
All right.
Martinez isn't like that. Martinez is like, I know what my guys can do, and we're playing for the points. So I don't care that it's Chelsea. I don't care that it's Manchester City. Enough. We're playing for the points. And that's a huge difference, Jason. He has a winning mentality. That's not something that, honestly, I don't believe David Moyes has ever had.
All right, fair enough. And that is certainly a criticism that Moyes is facing at United. He's not coming out and presenting the Manchester United sort of image, which is we can beat anybody. We go at everybody. We have an opportunity to win. It's always, as you said, if that's his history, then that's clearly the type of manager he is. It's, we're going to go out and give it our best shot and see what happens. I mean, that clearly doesn't inspire confidence in the fans. Whether or not it has any impact on the players, I don't know. But it's only fair to judge David Moyes on the entirety of his career, not necessarily just on what he did at Everton. And right now, it looks like that Roberto Martinez has taken the parts that Moyes left behind, added to them in a couple of areas, changed the mentality. And Bill on Twitter's got a perfect way to sum this up. Everton under Moyes, punching above its weight but conservative. Everton under Martinez, high risk, high reward. Is that how you would characterize this?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's obviously invigorated things at Everton. And you could also look at it, and we just got done talking about Arsene Wenger and his status at Arsenal with Luke Moore. You could look at this as, after a decade plus, Everton needed this change, whether it was about David Moyes leaving from United or not. Sort of the notion that, and I am as romantic as anybody about a Ferguson-like stay at a club and being there for 25 years and et cetera, et cetera. We see it in college sports mostly in this country these days. I'm cool. I love that aspect of it and having that connected. But you end up with this sort of cult of personality, whether it's successful or not, and things get tired and stayed, and they just don't progress. And people either get complacent or there's just not an invigorating sort of sense behind let's go do this thing. It becomes rote. And that may have been the case at Everton.
Yeah, no, for the last couple of seasons, you definitely got the feeling that perhaps Moyes had reached his ceiling with Everton. And that, but we're not gonna say, oh, Moyes, thanks, bye-bye. No, because he's done so much for the club. So and that's the same thing with Arsene Wenger. You could argue Arsenal have reached their ceiling, but he's done so much for the club that you can't just be like, well, thanks very much, now bye-bye, let's get someone else. It's not how it works.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's just a situation. Jason, I have a question for you. It's just I wanted to ask this for a while because I've been thinking about it. It has to do with the U.S. national team.
All right.
I want to get your perspective on this as a fan, and you've been a fan since the days of Brian McBride and even before that with Eric Ronaldo.
Sure.
I want to know how you feel about having someone like Josie be your number one striker for like the next 6 to 8 years or however long Josie's going to play, because it just feels like it's just period after inconsistency after inconsistency after inconsistency, where you can never really feel confident that he's going to be the guy leading your line. I'm guessing you were happy with Brian McBride, and you knew what you were going to get out of him.
Yeah, sure.
Every game that you would see him play.
Yeah, no. I said no, which I hate doing. I think that there is some creeping discomfort with that. Sure. I mean, I think Josie Altidore is a talented soccer player. I think he's a talented striker. He has clearly gone through some ups and downs in his career. Some of them self-inflicted, some of them not. It's been not the decisions made about where he should go and what leagues and teams he should join haven't always been correct for his development. I'm comfortable enough with everything else he does that I don't know. I suppose that it would be a much better feeling if we had sort of a Brian McBride clone starting up top of the U.S. national team right now, considering Josie's struggles. But I'm also enough of a supporter of Josie and a believer in his ability that I'm not, I don't let that become some sort of existential crisis with me and the national team, Vince. Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And look, I think that back, behind Josie Altidore, there is strength there, and there's talent there, and we're seeing, potentially one of the best American midfields. I mean, there have been some good ones in the past with Reyna and all of these guys, but I'm sort of positive in general. I'm just not one of those fans who finds all of the reasons to be negative and predicts failure. I believe enough in my team to give them to allow them to have the chance to go and win.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm going to do a dark horse prediction right now.
All right.
I'm thinking Wando pulls a Robbie Finley and gets some starts at the World Cup.
All right, we'll see if that happens. I appreciate the phone call, Vince. Thanks a lot, man.
Jason, just one more quick thing.
Sure.
On Twitter, I made a joke about Edson Buttle and how it was a dark time for the U.S. having him as a number one striker. And 10 minutes after I made that tweet, he scored against Toronto. So I think I might have made my bet on that one.
All right, yeah. You brought the universe back around on yourself. Thanks for the call, Vince in Toronto.
No problem.
All right, man. Producer Vince calling in as he is want to. Dropping officially now via MLS Communications the announcement that there is a big event Wednesday night in Atlanta. Arthur Blank in Major League Soccer to make a major announcement. Arthur Blank, Major League Soccer Commissioner Don Garber, Mayor Kasim Reed, Frank Poe, Executive Director of the Georgia World Congress Center Authority, will make an important announcement Wednesday on the future of soccer in Atlanta. Starts apparently at 5-ish, I suppose. Yes, 5 o'clock p.m. it starts. So we'll be watching Atlanta on Wednesday because they're getting an MLS expansion franchise. All of those reports completely 100% accurate. All of those sources let that fly, and now we have a new team entering MLS. The questions will remain, and I saw somebody tweet a stat on this, and I don't have it at this point. I need to go back and find it. Somebody counted the number. Oh, it was Dan Dickinson, our friend Gothamist Dan. He tweeted that the number of months ahead of joining the league for the announcement of these expansion franchises, that it's 35 months if Atlanta's joining in 2017, 35 months from when they'll start play. It was 22 months for New York City FC and 16 months for Orlando City, who are both joining in 2015. So I think that says a couple of things. One, the leak, all of that news and the agreement was out there already. So why not go ahead and announce it? And two, I think it says something about the need for a longer buildup in Atlanta. Now, I hope that they're proactive with this. They get out ahead of it. They get the name. They get the colors. They get the look. They get the community aspect of it all started up now. Now, starting Thursday. Don't wait for 6 months. Do it now. Get started now. Get into the community. Now, you don't have players yet. I get it. You probably won't have a coach for another year because you can't really hire a coach with 2+ years to go. 2.5 years to go. Wow. So you can't do all of that, but you can make your presence felt somehow. And I imagine Terminus Legion is all on board to help them with that. Soccer fans in Atlanta, I'm sure, are ready to help out in whatever way possible. I know 35 months is a long time. Again, if they're starting in 2017, that's a long time. But there are things you can do. Don't wait until less than a year away from your launch to put your badge out into the world the way New York City FC did. Now, I think everybody's like, oh, that's a decent looking badge, although some people have pointed out that it's really too close to Inter Milan for their liking, but hey, whatever. But they waited too long. Does anybody believe that they didn't wait too long? New York City FC? With less than a year to sort of make their presence felt in New York as a separate entity from Manchester City. I think anybody feels that they did this the right way. I mean, there's lots of money behind that program. They still don't have a stadium deal set up. Working on that. When are we going to hear it's going to be Yankee Stadium? Because that's got to be coming, right? Phone lines, wow. Phone lines are open, 347-756-6276. I think we're going to take a break here, actually. Get all of Alfonso Martinez's music in on this show. Let's take a break. I'll reset. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll touch on whatever's on your mind on a Monday, whether it's Premier League, whether it's MLS, whether it's the U.S. men's national team. This is the cherry song from Alfonso's playlist, Word Up by Cameo. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning. It is Monday. You are recovering from your weekend. Actually, at some point in your life, and I think I'm past this point, so I'm going to talk about it from experience. You transition from a recovering from your weekend because you're young enough that it's a lot of parties, maybe some alcohol involved. Maybe you go out and you play. You're a weekend warrior type and you play in your local rec league. Maybe you play more than one game. Maybe you also, go for a jog or whatever you do with your weekend. But it's certainly the partying aspect. So Monday is a recovery day. You wake up on Monday, you go to work, you sit down at your desk, and really what you're doing is trying to get your brain back in gear and recover from everything you did. But then you cross a threshold. Maybe it's marriage and kids. Maybe that's the threshold. And it's less about recovering from your weekend as it is sort of getting back into your routine. Like you actually relax a little bit on the weekend, but damn, you got tons of stuff going on. You got to go out to youth soccer games and you got to see family. You got to get the garden ready for the summer or the spring. You got to mow the lawn. You got to do all of this stuff. And you just want to get back to your regular routine. And it's not that you're recovering anymore. It's just you're getting back into, hey, at least I don't have to deal with the kid for a while. Except it's spring break where I am. So my kid's off for a week, which will be fine. Love my kid, love hanging out with my kid, but damn, I got to work. He's not going to be working. Not going to school. He's going to be here. He's going to be running around. He's 5 years old. Had his second U6 game over the weekend. That's quite the experience. They play these little mini fields, mini goals. They roll a ball. Every time a ball goes out of bounds, they roll a new ball in. It's 3-on-3. Is this a standard thing? I have no experience with youth soccer. And honestly, I didn't want to be so intense with my kids' soccer that I researched what this was versus what the other league was. So it's 3-on-3. They roll the ball in. Good times. Lots of just kicking the ball around. Not a lot of thought going into what's happening on the field. But that was my weekend. Phone lines open 347-756-6276. NASL kicked off this weekend. New York Cosmos beat the Atlanta Silverbacks 4-0. Eric Winaldo apparently not very impressed with the New York Cosmos. So there's that. Eric Winaldo's quotes something along the lines of, they got lucky. We weren't fortunate. They were fortunate, blah, blah, blah. Remember, Eric Winaldo in LA doing Fox stuff during the week and then shuttling to Atlanta for the weekends for these games. And I have a love-hate relationship with Eric Ronaldo. Let's just lay this out there right now. Love-hate relationship with Eric Ronaldo. I love the fact that the guy is outspoken and opinionated, and obviously I respect everything he brought to the U.S. national team during his tenure there, or during his run there as a player. But on the other hand, sometimes the guy, he makes it hard on himself. And when you see some of the things he says, and not there, I guess there's nothing wrong with the head coach sort of throwing shade on a team that just walloped his team. Before nothing, I mean, scoreline doesn't really help you out there much, Eric. But should Eric Ronaldo get a chance in MLS? It's been a running question around this league, around this community for a while now. Because every time a job opens up and it goes to a guy like Jay Heaps, Pablo Mastroeni, Jeff Cassar, there are questions. Well, why doesn't Ronaldo get his shot? Where's Ronaldo's shot? I'd love to see Ronaldo get a shot in MLS. Absolutely love it. Number one, because it'd be fun. Because he talks, he's entertaining. We don't have a lot of entertaining characters in this league from a coaching standpoint. Give me more entertainment. Give me a guy who's going to give me a soundbite after the game that isn't, well, we played really hard. We just hit a couple of our chances. In the second half, we just weren't focused enough, and we had a little bit tired. And no, give me something to work with here. Hey, throwing shade at your opponent when you lose 4-0, that's something somewhat interesting. Now, I'd prefer that be on an MLS level for the profile of it, because no offense to the Cosmos and the Silverbacks, it's still an ASL. And I know Pele was out there. Pele getting honored at Hofstra as the Cosmos opened up their season. But we need Eric Ronaldo in American soccer. I'm not going to argue that at all. I do wonder, sometimes he has undermined his own possibilities. Say it that way. Undermined his own possibilities of being a head coach in this league. So the New York Cosmos 4-0 over Atlanta. Looking at these score lines here. 1-1 Indianapolis, Carolina. The Indy 11 have started their life as an NASL franchise. 11,000 people out there to watch that team play. Congratulations to Peter Wilt and everybody over there at Indy 11. They have done a magnificent job getting that team off the ground. There is real excitement in Indianapolis. I hope I wish them the best. I don't know if 11,000 is something they can maintain over the course of a whole season, but it's absolutely a fantastic start. Absolutely a fantastic start for Indy 11 as they enter as an NASL and NASL franchise. Fort Lauderdale 2-0 over Ottawa. Tampa Bay 1-1 with FC Edmonton. Let's see. I'm looking at this here. Minnesota United 2-0 over San Antonio. In San Antonio, I got to check on this. Scorpions a good team this year? Supposed to be a good team this year? No. The undercurrent of all of this, and I think this is why you get Bill Peterson out there, as we decided on the Best Soccer Show last night, cutting promos, WWE wrestling style. The undercurrent here is, well, is San Antonio a candidate for MLS? Is Minnesota a candidate for MLS? One of these teams going to be, is their future in doubt because of that? Already Atlanta. Look, Atlanta's got an announcement on Wednesday. Nobody knows what that means for the Silverbacks. I'm sure there'll be some questions and maybe there'll be a couple of answers. I expect them to dance around the topic. As far as I know right now, nothing exists in terms of relationship between the Silverbacks and Arthur Blank and his group and the Falcons. Because right now this is a Falcons thing. It's MLS, but it's the Falcons. They're the ones going to be taking the point. We've already put this to you guys. We've gone over it 1,000 times. Atlanta, good idea, bad idea, blah, blah, blah. The proof is going to be in the pudding. Show up, fill up that lower bowl at the Atlanta Falcons Stadium, which, again, it looks like 35 months is going to be the run-up. So we're going to have 35 months of this. I'm sure you're excited. 35 months of talking about Atlanta. Well, what did they do this time? Here's their new badge. Okay, great. What are their colors? Okay. What's their name? And what's happening now? Is Blank out there pushing the soccer agenda? Because he's going to have to. 35 months of that. Looking forward to it. I'm sure you're all excited. So we go back to MLS, and I asked Charlie Boehm this question when we had him on. Surprises in the MLS season so far. He went with a positive surprise. The Columbus Crew, positive surprise. 10 points, 5 games, doing very well. They end up giving up a late set-piece goal to San Jose and not winning that game, getting a point out of that game, but it's not a terrible result for them. So they have charged out to lead the East. Positive surprise, the Columbus Crew. Good stuff there. I think another positive surprise, FC Dallas. They lost to Seattle. Clint Dempsey on fire right now, which is good to see. How much does Clint Dempsey scoring goals for the Seattle Sounders sort of make you less concerned about Josie Altidore and his situation at Sunderland and the potential for Josie not to play much down the stretch of the Sunderland season? They're probably going down. It's been a very bad year. Josie hasn't scored at all. I did like, and full respect to Josie Altidore for his response to some asshat journalist in Sunderland who was out at some game. No, he was tweeting about the Sunderland game this weekend. A game that they lost, by the way. A game in which they scored 0 goals. But this journalist, in quotes, took a shot, said Connor Wickham done more in one game than Josie Altidore's done the whole season. And used Josie Altidore's Twitter handle. This wasn't subtweeting, which if you're talking about somebody like Josie Altidore, a famous athlete, he doesn't need to throw the actual handle in there, make it show up in Josie's timeline, in his mentions. You don't need to do that. The only reason he's doing that is because he wants to get under Josie Altidore's skin. That's the only reason to do it. Because athletes all the time are trying to either avoid the stuff that's being talked about with them, or if they pay attention to it, they're not going to say they are, but they'll go looking for it. They'll find it, whatever. It was completely unnecessary, in my estimation. And Josie said his response. He replied. He said, "Good. I'm excited to see him playing well." Because he could have gotten angry. We've seen athletes do this before. He could have gotten annoyed that this journalist decided to take a shot on Twitter, but he didn't. There's no reason to think right now, no matter how you feel about Josie Altidore's experience at Sunderland, there's no reason to think that he's an attitude problem. Now, I know everybody wants to point to body language on the field in the 90 minutes of the game. And certainly Sunderland fans who they're passionate about their team. They want to see their team perform well. When it's not going well, and Josie Altidore is not the first striker in the history of the sport to have a bad run of form, to struggle in a setup that doesn't maximize his potential. So when the fans are watching this, of course they're going to be harsh. Of course they are. I don't blame Sunderland fans for being upset. And you have to read all of the tweets and see all the comments and take them with that grain of salt. The bias that's involved. These people desperately want to see their team win, and when it's not working, when they're not scoring, then they're going to rip the players on the field. Comes with the territory. I'm sure Josie Altidore will be the first one to tell you it comes with the job. So we have to keep in mind that no matter what happens, what's happening with Josie, and there should be worries about the World Cup. I get that. No reason to think that he's an attitude problem. No reason at all. Ridiculous. All right, last couple of minutes of the show here on a Monday. I want to recap what we talked about at the top of the show. We had some response on Twitter. I appreciate everybody expressing their thoughts and concerns. Bring them to us. We'll address them, certainly. And I know that, look, we've run campaigns in the past. We ran a campaign to start the year. That's out there. And I had somebody on Twitter said, "Oh, look, some people have contributed. It's going to be hard for them to contribute again." Completely get that. Again, guys, look, this isn't a guilt trip. This is a flatly stated bit of reality here. This is just the way it works on this show right now, because the world has yet to wake up to the value of our audience. And there's a lot of you out there. And I don't know why why advertisers wouldn't want to target you guys. Again, if we could tomorrow sign somebody up to pay our bills so we can go on without having to bug you guys, I would do that in a second. Absolutely do that in a second. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have to ask for your help to keep going. It's just the way it is. Again, I'm going to hold on as long as I possibly can. It's pretty dire right now, but I'm going to claw and hold on as long as I possibly can. So any help you guys can give us is greatly appreciated and will help to the long-term future on this show. Again, we have World Cup plans we want to do. We do have things we want to do around the World Cup. We're excited for the World Cup while we're also concerned. Soccermorning.com is where you can find out how to help us out. And I appreciate everybody who does. Every single one. No, whether it's this time around, last time around, last year. We completely appreciate everybody who steps up. Love you guys. I love you guys. Can I say that? Is that okay? Is that too emo? Love you guys. Soccermorning.com. Thanks a lot. Thank you to Charlie Boehm. Thank you to Luke Moore for joining us. Thank you to Vince who basically was a guest today. You're on the air for like 12 or 15 minutes, Vince. You're essentially a guest. Maybe I should make Vince from Toronto my co-host. Should I do that? Get a little cross-border action? I don't know. I think Vince is like a student or something. I don't think he has the time. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks to Alfonso Martinez for his support of the show and his music today. If you want to be DJ for a day, that's available there too. Soccermorning.com. Go find out how to step up and support the show and be able to pick the songs. That's going to do it for me and producer Trevor. Go to iTunes. Help us out there. The more people who know about the show, the more likely it is to keep going. That's always a good thing. And hey, you know what? If you guys want to cold call companies on our... No, I'm kidding. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll talk to you guys. What's tomorrow? Tuesday? Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Waiting